Hello, and welcome to my first video. Today, I will be recapping Cows by author Matthew Stokoe. I've seen this book on multiple disturbing book tier lists, so I've been planning on reading it for a while, and I just finished it today, and thought that since I plan on releasing my first video on Halloween, it would be a good idea to recap it to start off my channel. I'll cut the intro short here, and just get into the book now rather than keeping you waiting any longer. Our story is about Stephen. He is a young man about 25 years old, I believe, and he lives with his mother, who he refers to as the Hag Beast, and his dog, whose name is Dog. Dog is my favorite character in the book, to be honest. He is a crippled dog. I don't think they specify what breed, but he can only use his front two paws because his hind legs were crippled by the Hag Beast when she decided to attack the poor thing with a brick. The book begins with Stephen complaining about the food his mother, the Hag Beast, makes him. Undercooked or even raw, disgusting meats that sound terrible, that the Hag Beast also eats. Stephen wishes badly that he could live a life like he sees on TV sitcoms, living with a wonderful wife that will love him and tend to the house and eventually have his child. Stephen starts a new job at a slaughterhouse. He feeds meat into a grinder all day over and over again and meets a weird supervisor named Cripps and another strange coworker named Gummy. Gummy gets his name due to the fact that the inside of his mouth was maimed. This was done by a cow as he tried tongue-kissing it, and he had to be pried off with a crowbar. The cow was then killed. Cripps has plans for Stephen that will be more important later on in the story. Back at home, Stephen is treated to more disgusting food and mistreatment from his mother, and an argument breaks out. His mother tells him a story of when she was young and worked on a goose farm, and she used to cut the heads off the geese, and I quote, stick the necks inside of herself. This barely phases Stephen because, and again I quote, Stephen had heard all of her stories before he was 8 years old, including this one. After eating disgusting food and arguing with Stephen, the Hag Beast then walks over to Dog and proceeds to urinate on the poor puppy. Stephen then tries to clean Dog, who appreciates the attention, but the book also says that Dog's eyes had a sad look of betrayal because Stephen, once again, couldn't protect him, just like when the Hag Beast beat it with a brick and crippled it in the past. Stephen also meets a young lady that the book describes as half Indian, half Jewess. Her name is Lucy. Lucy lives in his apartment complex and is obsessed with finding bile inside dead bodies, and asks Stephen if he ever found this type of bile in the cows he sees at the slaughterhouse that he works at, but Stephen tells her he hadn't seen anything like this before. Despite this odd fascination the woman has with bile and dead bodies, Stephen sees her as a potential partner, and if he can win her over, he will be one step closer to getting the picture-perfect sitcom family he craves. He tells her he will investigate this bile and report back to her if he finds it. As things progress between the two, Stephen uses an endoscope on her, and she tries to use it to see if she can find the dark matter inside of her body. She comes up short in terms of dark bile, and Stephen ends up losing his virginity to her during this meeting as the endoscope is still currently inside of her other hole. Anyway, I should mention he's keeping this relationship a secret from the Hag Beast for obvious reasons, not wanting her to find out so she could ruin what he currently has with Lucy, albeit as weird as it is. It's his best chance at getting a romantic partner. Back in his room, after he did the deed, he goes to sleep with Dog. Another argument occurs the next morning when the Hag Beast questions where he was the previous night, but Stephen tells her he was up on the roof of the apartment, and she buys it. During the argument, Stephen says she shouldn't have pissed on Dog, and the Hag Beast actually says she wishes she would have pissed down its throat and drowned it instead. Eventually, tired of always eating gross slop or spoiled and raw meat, Stephen says for now on he'll cook and she'll eat what he makes. Back at the slaughterhouse, a cow gets loose and tries to escape, but Cripps blew the animal's brains out with a shotgun. This makes Stephen wish he could take care of his mother in the same way Cripps got rid of the cow with barely any effort. Cripps basically lectures Stephen on self-empowerment through killing and makes him feel a cow as they kill it with a bolt gun. Cripps actually plans to eventually move him up to become a slaughterer himself too, rather than just having him chuck meat into the grinder. Stephen later finds out a select group of workers actually have what they call slaughter parties, and they take a cow, drill holes in it, and sadistically fuck the holes they just made before killing it. Cripps helps Stephen kill his first cow, then ass fucks Stephen, who basically just takes it in stride without complaining. Back at home, Stephen decides to make his mother and him their first meal. The meal in question is Stephen's own shit. He shits on a plate and covers it with newspaper and forces himself to eat it along with the hag beast herself. Stephen tells her he is getting stronger recently, and she takes this as a challenge and eats his literal shit as to prove a point, and marches up to Stephen, and to make a point of how easily she can emasculate him, she strips him of his clothes and says she doesn't see his strength and questions where it is. Stephen goes to bed sick, but ends up feeling better when he sees the hag beast vomit outside his room. He smiles knowing that she is not invincible, which gives him hope. Stephen goes to see Lucy, who is opening up a lab rat and removing its organs while still alive, and trying to find the black bile supposedly inside the small creature. Stephen later sees that she has done this multiple times when he sees multiple hollowed out rats and small piles of organs beside them. He tells her he killed a cow yesterday. Then he wonders where this power Cripps had told him about, and when it would finally appear to him. Next, at work, Stephen finds out that an escaped cow can talk, and rather than being freaked out, he just goes along with it, and hears what it has to say. The cow tells him he better avoid Cripps. Stephen later learns that this cow is a Guernsey cow, specifically, and seems to be the leader of a gang of escaped cows from the slaughterhouse, and they plan on killing Cripps. After the first interaction with the cow, it leaves, and Cripps escorts Stephen to the bolt gun and jerks off as he watches Stephen kill a few cows. The book specifically says Cripps was looking at Stephen rather than the actual killing that Stephen was doing, so I thought that I should mention it here. At home, things progress with Lucy, and Stephen's mother is getting sicker due to Stephen making her eat his shit, and Stephen starts seemingly to build a tolerance to it. Finally, one day at work, Cripps decides to let Stephen move on from killing cows and lets him kill Gummy, the employee I mentioned earlier, as a special treat, which Stephen does. And with that, Stephen has killed his first human. This won't be the last in this story. With this done, now Stephen has the guts to finally attempt to kill his mother, the hag beast. Unfortunately, things don't go as planned, and the hag beast ends up nearly strangling Stephen. However, he is saved when Dog bites her viciously, buying Stephen time to escape. Unfortunately for Dog, though, the hag beast beats him to death, but Stephen now gets the upper hand thanks to Dog's distraction, and Stephen not only wins the fight, but ends up restraining her, knocking her old nasty teeth out, filing down the stumps that were left inside her mouth that couldn't be knocked out, then tapes her head to his own asshole and proceeds to shit down her throat. Similarly to how she threatened to piss down Dog's throat earlier in the book and drown him, he is now doing that with his own shit to his mother. Stephen then lets Lucy examine the hag beast's body and afterwards burns her remains on the rooftop of the apartment. He then brings Dog's corpse, leaving Dog between two chimneys, so he can enjoy the view of the rooftop and the monster's corpse that killed him that Stephen had set ablaze. Lucy now moves in with Stephen, and they watch TV together, and Stephen has her take notes on how to behave like the wives on the sitcoms he admires, and things start looking up a bit for Stephen. At work, he decides to go through with the Guernsey's plan of killing Cripps, under the condition that he can kill Cripps himself, and the Guernsey reluctantly agrees. As Cripps has Stephen torture a cow by shooting it with a bolt gun in the jaw, Stephen awaits for the cows to show up. The torture scene is pretty gruesome here, but finally they hear the cows coming, and as Cripps tries to retreat, Stephen shoots him in the knee with a bolt gun, wounding him but not killing him yet. He drags Cripps through the vents and onto the Guernsey, and after knocking him unconscious, the gang takes Cripps to the central chamber in the vents where the cow's hideout is. When Cripps woke up, he was naked, tied up spread eagle, and Cripps actually half smiled at Stephen and encourages Stephen to kill him, much to Stephen's surprise. Stephen cuts off 4 limbs and tourniquets each injury on Cripps's body, until he's basically just a head. and a body. The cut-off limbs are laid around his nugget-shaped body like a snow angel or a flesh angel, as the book says. Cripps was still alive, though, and Stephen couldn't have that. I'll spare you the details, but Cripps is tortured to death by Stephen, and all the cows except the Guernsey start looking up to Stephen almost like a god. After the death of Cripps, things were good for a while. Lucy would cook for him, greet him warmly when he came home, but he had an ego now and thought that he was too good to be at the slaughterhouse. So one day he meets the Guernsey, who tells him the rest of the cows need him. He hops on the Guernsey's back and is taken to the herd. The Guernsey then questions if they really should have killed Cripps, because they invested so much time in it that once he was dead, they now felt lost and without a purpose. Stephen stands on the Guernsey and, like Christ, opens his arms and offers to lead them, and after some contemplation, and despite the Guernsey not trusting Stephen's intentions, the herd accepts Stephen as their leader. For now. It's at this point Stephen decides to use the herd for his own personal and monetary gain. The Guernsey, however, makes it clear that eventually there will be a power struggle between him and Stephen, and a young female cow especially starts taking liking to Stephen. Meanwhile, Lucy is pregnant back home and trying her best to be the best housewife she can for Stephen, and spends all her time in the flat. She occasionally goes to the rooftop to see the view, but never actually leaves the flat herself. As Lucy starts to doubt the future with Stephen and the baby, Stephen tries to comfort her and plots secretly a way to earn a lot of cash fast. He plans on going to a skyscraper that is currently being built right now. Right now it's just a shell, with a small hut inside where they keep the payroll. Stephen plans on robbing them with the help of the cows. Meanwhile, the Guernsey is planning to get rid of Stephen. During this raid, Stephen closed in on a worker to get another kill, but the kill was stolen by the Guernsey, which pisses Stephen off. After the other cows cause chaos and leave more workers dead, blood, brains, and guts are all over the place. Stephen makes his way to the dented box containing bills worth several thousand and swipes them, filling his pockets. The Guernsey hopes his time with Stephen is coming to an end soon, but Stephen makes it clear he wants to do this again and further exploit the gang of cows to further his own ends. As they go back, the cows showed their appreciation to Stephen, and the female roan cow from earlier offers her body to Stephen, and despite him already having Lucy back home, he takes advantage of the female roan cow and fucks her right there as the others watch and cheer him on. All the cows encourage Stephen until he finishes, except for the Guernsey. After this, he rides the Guernsey's back to get back home and feels it plotting against him, so he thinks he should do as much with the cows as he possibly can, get as much money as he possibly can, and do it quickly before the Guernsey turns on him over control for the cow gang. Back at home, Lucy is having a breakdown and Stephen wants to grab her and scream at her, but tries his best to settle her down verbally instead. Lucy is clearly mental and is back to obsessing over dark matter or poison inside the body again. He uses a lot of effort to calm Lucy and make her behave in a way he deems appropriate in the following days, but also sees a clear obstacle in both Lucy's mental health and the Guernsey that wants his leadership position in the gang. Plus he's running low on funds now, so he goes back to the storm drain where the gang of cows hang out to plan another raid. When he approaches, the Guernsey eyes him closely, and Stephen notices the roan female sleeping beside the Guernsey, and she is leaking seed from her backside, implying the Guernsey had just had his way with her. In Stephen's absence, possibly to assert dominance while Stephen was gone tending to Lucy, the Guernsey shows that the remains of Cripps had been moved and that the Guernsey was now using Cripps's corpse as his personal dumping grounds. Cripps's bones are now covered in his shit as well. As Stephen stared at the bones mixed with cow shit that used to be Cripps, the Guernsey tells him that he led another raid without Stephen. He carried it out as leader and caused a stampede within the tunnels against some engineers, and he liked the power that came along with being the boss while Stephen was gone. The gang of cows start chanting Stephen's name and makes it clear they want to do another raid just as much as he does, so they plan to commence another raid, this time against an underground station where there are humans for the cows to kill. The Guernsey tries to give orders to the others as they get closer to prove he knows how to command them, but Stephen sees about a dozen soon-to-be victims and ignores the Guernsey's words and just grabs it by the ears and commands it and the rest of the herd to charge. Stephen encourages the gang into more chaos by telling them to do what feels right as they wreck the station The Guernsey tells Stephen that he is a better leader than him, and eventually the gang will figure this out for themselves. The Guernsey also tells Stephen there's a train coming and he should find his own ride back, then abandons him with the herd. But the roan female comes to the rescue. After Stephen collects some remains of the dead humans and throws them into a t-shirt he uses as a sack, the roan female takes off and gives him a ride back, and they avoid the train. When they get to safety, she again offers her body to him, which he accepts and uses her to assert his dominance and her submission in their bizarre human and cow relationship. Back at their hideout, the Guernsey now makes it clear he thinks he should be the gang's leader, and is brave enough this time to say it in front of all the other cows. And Stephen, meanwhile, takes his bag full of remains and tells the cows to eat the flesh he gathered, starting with the roan one. The roan female eats the human flesh and kisses him. The rest then follow and eat their human flesh, all except for the Guernsey. This causes them to develop an addiction to human flesh. Stephen acts as if this will bring them true enlightenment. Meanwhile, Lucy is back at the flat and having more dark feelings, and actually convinces herself that the baby inside her is the dark matter, or bile, she wanted to so badly get rid of inside her body. This leads to her cutting it out herself, and in the process she dies by bleeding onto the floor of her flat. The baby, which is now free, also dies too. Stephen returns to find Lucy and the unborn child both dead in a lake of blood. He is angry that Lucy seemingly ruined this family he had so desperately wanted to make him feel whole. He takes the corpse of the baby and a few pointy kitchen knives and impales it, and sticks it to the wall. That night, he goes to his room, and as the TV plays, he turns his back on it, because as far as he was concerned, it only shows lies. Stephen hunched into himself on top of the blankets and emptied his mind until the morning. Stephen was conscious in the morning, but he would not move from this spot for 3 days, due to his depression. Finally, on the 4th day, he rose and forced himself to clean up. The horrendous smell of Lucy's corpse, still in the air from when she died. He dragged her body to the rooftop and spots what was left of Dog, still wedged between 2 chimneys where he had left him. He puts Dog's corpse inside Lucy, where his child used to be, then left the bodies for the crows to eat. Then he starts cleaning his flat, as the corpse of what would have been his child was still sticking impaled on the kitchen wall Stephen had stuck it to earlier. As Stephen cleans, part of the apartment collapses, causing a giant hole to form where bricks once were. As he looked at the hole in the rain, he was tempted to laugh just because of how far he had fallen, when he thought he was so close to that sitcom family he so desperately wanted. Then he realizes that the collapse of the bricks would attract people, and the dread of having no home to return to makes him vomit as he prepares to make an escape for this shitty apartment that was falling apart. He ends up pissing himself due to all the people on the street he has to encounter. Then he finally wakes up in the sewers and makes his way back to the cows' hideout. The cows are stampeding and would have taken Stephen out if he hadn't acted swiftly and dodged the oncoming stampede of cows. This stampede was led by the Guernsey. Stephen goes back to the chamber where Cripps's corpse was and rips off Cripps's thigh bone, and when the cows returned, led by the Guernsey, he plans to strike. The cows were now addicted to human flesh, thanks to Stephen feeding them, and the Guernsey led them to the chamber after the raid they just completed and ordered his gang to eat the human flesh that he now provided them. After this, the cows start to doze off, and the Guernsey begins fucking the female roan cow. An hour later, as all of the herd slept, but for the Guernsey, Stephen snuck up on him, and the Guernsey tells him he is not needed anymore. He's seen the female roan look at him, and she senses what was coming. Stephen thinks she was looking at him, hoping he would win the fight that was inevitably about to go down. Stephen then uses Cripps's thigh bone to kill the Guernsey and secure his place as leader of the cow gang once and for all. As the story ends, he realizes that although it might be unorthodox, he now had the family he craved in the gang of cows and took the female roan as his partner. And that's where this story ends. Overall, this book wasn't the most disturbing thing I've ever read, but I'd say it clearly belongs on the disturbing book tier list that I've seen it appear on. I enjoyed reading it, and would probably give it a 7 out of 10. Hope you enjoyed this recap, and feel free to tell me in the comments what disturbing book I should read next, or what your favorite disturbing book you have read yourself is, and thank you for watching.